It's an insane story, but something that's really important that kind of got overshadowed by the fact that there's mpreg.
Ladies, gentlemen, and those with the good sense to do away with the whole notion, I welcome you to the premier audio medium for all your Fazbear entertainment needs. The Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. Note, FFPP is not responsible for any loss of appetite, disinterest, dismemberment, or other legally classified statuses. So strap in and enjoy.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast. I'm your host, The Toast, Ryan Toast, here to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's like we always do. I don't know why I'm in such a newscaster feel. My hands are literally doing this on the desk in front of me, like, ladies and gentlemen, we have a story tonight. There was actually a Faz sighting at the mall. I just wanted to do another round of questions. You know, like I said, this is the second podcast episode before Secret of the Mimic. Second to last podcast episode before Secret of the Mimic. So I just want to get as many questions out about FNAF in general as I can before we hyper-fixate on this new entry. Good bit of housekeeping. This is my first official video in Pride Month. Happy Pride, everybody. Like I say every year, and like I'll say in this Friday's video, if you have a problem with Pride, the LGBT community, or the like, you're not welcome in my community, and you can leave. We don't want you here. Unsubscribe button's right there. I stand 10 toes down on that. Also, quick reminder, Switch 2 launches on Thursday. I'm going to try to live stream myself picking it up because I have a midnight release Wednesday at midnight. But, you know, if the people around me are uncomfortable with a live stream, I'm not going to. I'm going to respect their wishes first. So regardless of what happens, guaranteed stream, 1 a.m. Thursday morning, maybe earlier. The second I get home, download that day one patch, download Mario Kart World, we are playing it, and I will stream until we unlock Rainbow Road. Hopefully that's just like an hour or two. I don't know. There's only 4 courses. There's only 4 cups. It shouldn't be, or 8 cups, 32 tracks. There's only 8 cups. It shouldn't take that long. Only 4 cups. Are you crazy? I'm mixing it up with the fact that, like, in a Rytoost video, I said Double Dash had 32 when it has 16. Oopsie. If you didn't know, I make Nintendo content and just general gaming content on Rytoost, my second YouTube channel, RYETWOST. I'll link it right here if I remember. But the pre-order live stream, that'll be on Twitch, twitch.tv/RyToastYT, where I stream Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, 9 p.m. EST every single week, as will the Mario Kart World stream. But the Mario Kart World stream will be on YouTube and Twitch, the second channel on YouTube. Because that's a big stream. Any momentous stream, I want to get as many people to be able to see it as possible. Anyway, housekeeping aside, Five Nights at Freddy's. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them into FreddyFazbearPizzaPodcast@gmail.com. It's in the description to copy and paste because it's a pain to type out. Our first question comes from Hazel, they, them. I was listening to an older podcast to fall asleep, and you were talking about Freddy as an AI foil to the Mimic, rather than being possessed by Michael. Personally, I'm a huge fan of Michael being Freddy and getting a chance at redemption by protecting Gregory, literally as the weapon that killed his brother. What do you think about Roxy taking the role of AI foil? Personally, I think a lot of what she does seems more like an AI coming to sentience than Freddy's behavior. Plus, Roxy is the one who actually confronts the Mimic, then Freddy/Michael can retain his role as William's foil. Thank you for your question, Hazel. Before Ruin, I would have totally disagreed, but obviously you're using Ruin as your primary source here. I'm still iffy about Freddy being possessed by Michael Afton. I think we have enough evidence to say that the majority of spirits from FNAF 1 through Ultimate Custom Night are either at peace or in Ultimate Custom Night, right? I think the Fire and FNAF World, the Fire FNAF 6 plus FNAF World, was enough to allow most spirits to rest and find peace. So I am always going to be a little on edge about bringing any of those spirits into the modern story. That being said, I cannot deny that Glamrock Freddy being possessed by Michael Afton is not a compelling narrative. There is some evidence for it. You know, a lot of it is circumstantial. The problem with figuring out if Glamrock Freddy is possessed or not is the evidence that is used to prove that he is an AI gaining sentience is the same evidence that is used to prove he's possessed by Michael Afton. Because both of those are, well, he does things against his programming. which, like, it really comes down to what interpretation you prefer. Do you prefer that being him, you know, breaking away from programming because he is possessed by Michael Afton, or breaking away from programming because the Mimic AI framework within his programming is becoming sentient and rebelling against the Mimic One programs that have inspired him, like Vanny, like Burn Trap, etc., etc., etc. So, or I guess Glitch Trap, but you know what I mean. So to say, like, you know, one argument is better evidence than the other is untrue. Because at the end of the day, the majority of evidence for Michael Afton possessing Glamrock Freddy and Glamrock Freddy being an AI gaining sentience, the majority of that evidence, I would say, is the same evidence. It just depends on how you interpret it. So really we have to look at, you know, is there any evidence to say that Michael is possessing Glamrock Freddy that is separate from the AI gaining sentience? And then you would have to look at, like, traits or, you know, things that link it to Michael Afton specifically. I think it was FNAF. Somebody brought up that in the FNAF 6 bunker, there is a Foxy plush in the, like, hidden in the wall, and that might be a nod to Michael. You know, that is fair. There's a lot of ways you can look at it. We still don't have a lot of information on Security Breach in general. I think Security Breach in general is still, like, a collection of information that we don't have a direction to take it in. All this to say, like, Glamrock Freddy being possessed by Michael Afton is possible. It is, frankly, likely. I don't think it's as likely as Glamrock Freddy being an AI gaining sentience. Now, to the foil question of this, right now, to the main meat of this question, if Glamrock Freddy is possessed by Michael Afton, could Roxy take on the role of the Mimic's foil? For me, there's two big things that get brought up when we look at this. One, if Glamrock Freddy is being possessed by Michael Afton, is he then foiling Glitch Trap? And is that then presuming that Glitch Trap is programming that was overtaken by William Afton in some way? I think that would make sense in this framework, which I don't necessarily agree with, but we're doing the thought experiment. That being said, that then leaves the Mimic untouched, which, again, let's be clear here. Glitch Trap, also the Mimic, in a way. It's a different Mimic. When I say the Mimic, we are talking about the endoskeleton found in the basement of the Pizzaplex in Ruin. That endoskeleton, the physical endoskeleton. Because frankly, I'm of the opinion that pretty much every piece of machinery in the Pizzaplex is powered primarily from the framework of the Mimic 1 program. Like the Glamrocks, I think, are powered by that. I think the staff bots in some way are connected to it. I think the wet floor bots in some way are connected to it. I think it just makes sense. So when I say, you know, the Mimic, I'm specifically talking about the physical endoskeleton, which is likely the original endoskeleton made by Edwin Murray, which we're going to see in about 2 weeks, which is crazy that it's that close. So if Glitch Trap... So in this framework, where Glitch Trap is the Mimic 1 program that was taken over by William Afton, then you're right. An excellent foil would then be Glamrock Freddy, a robot using the Mimic 1 program that was overtaken by the spirit of Michael Afton. Once again, two characters that mirror each other on other sides of the morality spectrum. So now we go back to the Mimic, the physical endoskeleton. This is, as far as we're aware, currently, just a robot. A robot that somewhat seems to be gaining some sort of sentience, if not already has it. And the question is, what is its foil? Who can stand against it? In that framework, I do like your interpretation that Roxy would become the new foil. Because Roxy, as far as we're aware, no signs of possession whatsoever. The closest thing we get to Roxy acting out of the ordinary is she's obviously sent to get Gregory by Vanny, and in encountering Cassie multiple times, she starts remembering Cassie and starts breaking free of that control. And I think we see that in deactivating her before we go downstairs, right? The Mimic tells us there's one last security node. It's in Roxy. We need to deactivate her. Is that true? I don't think so. We look at Roxy and nothing about our mask says that she is a security node. I think the Mimic is recognizing that Roxy's programming is breaking free from the controls and confines of the Mimic. So that is a variable that could be a problem. It's a variable that could cause an issue down the line. So the Mimic wants us to deactivate her. Unfortunately for the Mimic, and, further to your point, we don't deactivate Roxy. The thing we do to Roxy is purposeful, and it's the same thing we do to Sun Moon earlier. And we do that thing to Sun Moon earlier. I think this is all Steel Wool and Scott basically looking at us and being like, hey, when you put your Faz Wrench in the head of an animatronic and turn it, you are resetting them to their essentially like factory settings while they retain their memory. You were giving them a safe mode reboot. The same thing that saved Glamrock Freddy from the clutches of Glitch Trap. So when we do it to Sun Moon, suddenly back to normal. They're clips again. They put us to safety and they go, I gotta clean this mess up later. Then when we get to Roxy and we deactivate her, what do but the exact same thing? She's half crushed underneath this forklift. We go up, we put our Faz Wrench in, and we turn it. And when we do that, we're not deactivating her. We are rebooting her into a safe mode. That is why I think she's able to make her way all the way down to the pizzeria simulator without being overtaken again, and is able to fight off the Mimic to give us time to get away. So, I think the idea that Roxy is an AI gaining sentience and overcoming controls as a foil to the Mimic in this framework, I think works really well. Especially because the Mimic is an AI that seemed to have gained sentience in the opposite direction. It seems like the Mimic, in a way, has gained some sort of sentience in the games, as far as we're aware so far, in order to exact some sort of violent end. It wants to do something. We're not sure yet what, but it's trying to do it very violently. Whereas Roxy is an AI gaining sentience to break the bonds of you need to do this violent thing into a protector role. Which I think is a really, I think that is objectively a very cool pair of foils. To have Glitch Trap, a program that was overtaken by the spirit of William Afton, be foiled by Glamrock Freddy, a robot who was overtaken by the spirit of Michael Afton, and then next to it be the Mimic, an endoskeleton that has gained some sort of sentience for violent revenge, being faced up and foiled against with Roxy, an animatronic whose AI was gaining sentience in order to protect the children around her. That's a really good narrative duo, or I guess quad. That narratively is incredibly satisfying. I still hesitate to say that Glamrock Freddy is possessed by Michael Afton. I still think Glamrock Freddy is an AI that has gained sentience, much like Roxy, and is the foil to the Mimic. And I mainly say this because I don't see compelling enough, personally, I don't see compelling enough evidence for Glitch Trap to be possessed by William Afton, or Glamrock Freddy to be possessed by Michael Afton. And furthermore, as far as Roxy is concerned, I think she's gone. The Mimic chased us, and nothing chased it. I think Roxy wasn't deactivated, but the Mimic deactivated her. I think Roxy served her narrative purpose in Security Breach and Ruin, and I don't think we're going to see her again. Now, it's possible we do. It really is. But I think, unfortunately, if any character from Security Breach, if any robot from Security Breach, besides the Mimic, is to make a secondary appearance, if any, or the Blob, let me qualify this better. If any protagonist robot is brand recognizable enough and plot relevant enough to make a secondary appearance after Ruin, it's kind of got to be Glamrock Freddy. Like, look, FNAF fans recognize Roxy. We know Roxy. But the general public, oh, isn't that one of those Freddy characters? They know Freddy. And I think the narrative has established that Glamrock Freddy will be coming back with Gregory and possibly Vanessa in the next entry to foil some sort of plot. I don't think they did the same thing for Roxy. Now, that is to say, like I've been saying, I think our next villain is Cassie and the Mimic wearing Roxy's clothes. Hear me out of how good this is. I've said it before, I will say it again. This is such a banger line that they have to go this route because it sounds that cool. If the Mimic is wearing Roxy's exoskeleton and Cassie is wearing Roxy merchandise, they are sheep in wolf's clothing. You know, that is such a good villain. You know, like, it just works perfectly, man. But thank you for your question. I guess to go back, actually, I got so distracted with the other thing. I guess to TLDR that whole discussion, in your framework, that works really well. But I don't like the idea of Glamrock Freddy being possessed by Michael, and I don't think, personally, there's enough evidence to convince me. But if you believe that, that's a really good parallel. Anyway, thank you for your question. Our next question comes from Jelani, they, them. Hi, Rye. I recently watched a video by Candy Bunny where she attempted to find the location of Golden Freddy during FNAF 3. She theorized that the vengeful spirit was trapped below the lake in the 5th glitch, or the crying child's memory, while attempting to set up the happiest day with Charlie. It's really... Thank you for your question. I'll have to watch that video, because I've never thought of that interpretation. I think I have two problems with it. The first thing that comes to mind that I don't think by FNAF 3 Charlie is setting up Happiest Day, because we have that screenshot of the puppet being physically present at FNAF 3. So I think the puppet is busy looking for William and trying to figure out what to do about William. I think Happiest Day can only happen post FNAF 6 Fire, because like the marionette says in Ultimate Custom Night, I'm not afraid of you, but you need to stay out of my way. I think the marionette is doing the classic, in the whole saying about like when you're in a plane, put your first mask on because you can't help others until you've helped yourself. I think the marionette is kind of doing that, and like Charlie / marionette is doing that in that moment where the first priority is take care of William, get rid of William Afton, then I can worry about helping everybody else, because I can't help everybody else if William Afton is still a present threat. So I think in FNAF 3 Charlie is not doing Happiest Day yet. So that would be my first problem with that interpretation. My second problem is that, likewise, the 5th lake and all that deep introspection, I think happens post FNAF 6 Fire, because I think that deep introspection needs very, very closely attached spirits with like a non-threatening time to do it. Whereas during FNAF 3, William Afton's walking around. As far as like Golden Freddy's physical location, I would say, probably still in the back room until William Afton goes to take pieces from it to repair himself post FNAF 3, a la Stormister's Why Scrap Trap Looks Like That video, which I still think just is such a strong theory. I don't have any qualms at all with it. And I think Cassidy's spirit is attached to Golden Freddy in that way, and is just kind of biding time during that time. That would be my take. Now, I'm not here to say Candy Bunny's theory is wrong. I didn't even watch the video. I'm going to probably do that after this podcast, because it seems like a really interesting take, and I would love to hear the evidence brought forward. But those would, on the surface, those would be my, like, I guess, issues with that. That's what comes to mind of, like, I don't know if I buy that. But totally valid interpretation, and thank you for bringing it to my attention. I'll have to look into it. Our next question comes from Incompetent Gentleman, he, him. There's a moment in the Gregory therapy tapes where the therapist mentions Gregory creating a program that talks to you and repeats phrases. I wonder if he created a new Mimic program, Mimic 2 or something like that. Maybe Helpy is the Mimic 2 program made by Gregory, and that's why it was competing with Mimic 1, arguing over who takes the credit. I'd say Helpy is Mimic 2 because the Mimic has a walkie-talkie in Ruin. Anyway, I was wondering what you would think about this. Thank you for your question. I hadn't considered that. So I hadn't really thought about that bit of the therapy logs in a while, because when we were first going through Security Breach and going through the therapy logs, when we got to, you made a program that talks to yourself, pretty much everyone, including myself, instantly went, oh, this is the therapist trying to make sense of Gregory talking to Glitchtrap. Because talking to Glitchtrap must look insane from a third party. Casey, if you move my camera one more goddamn time. Okay. Take a breath. Take a breath. I had to restart this recording 3 times, because 3 different times mid-recording, Casey he loves to walk behind my desk and he'll rub up against my webcam stand and just push it. I'm like, boy. Anyway. So, and then that kind of got filed into the, we've settled this for now. Pull that back out in case of emergency later. Like, we don't need this right now. We can deal with it later. Like, that part of the brain And I hadn't thought about it. But since the revelation of the mimic as a entity, that sure sounds like a mimic. Now, on one hand, this still could be Glitch Trap. This still could be, because the Glitch Trap is at least partly, if not fully, the Mimic 1 program. So it's possible that it's still the interpretation of the therapist of like, I saw you talking to a computer and it was talking back. You made like a self-chat program, didn't you? Because like, why would she assume, oh, isn't that program from the 70s that was made by Edwin Murray? Right? Like, she wouldn't know that. No one should know that. However, this goes back to the in the flesh connection. So in the flesh, now this was brought up on an earlier podcast. I'm just going to be stimming, don't mind me. This was brought up on an earlier podcast where someone mentioned they were rereading In the Flesh, and we all got distracted by the fact that it's the Matt Pat gets pregnant by Springtrap theory or book where Matt Pat okay. So what really happens? A guy named Matt is working on a VR Springtrap game and gets so mad making it that he starts getting pregnant until he gives birth to Springtrap. It's an insane story, but something that's really important that kind of got overshadowed by the fact that there's mpreg is in that story, the AI VR version of Springtrap gains the ability to make a new iteration of itself. And every time it made a new iteration of itself, the new version would kill the old version. And this goes, like, there's a quote from the book where, like, this went on and on, where Springtrap would make a new, better Springtrap, and that would kill the old Springtrap. And they kept doing it over and over again. So, the idea that Gregory, while under the control of Dr. Abbott, aka an iteration of Mimic, would make a new version of the Mimic, that's kind of evidentiarily backed as a possibility. The question is, if Gregory made a new Mimic program, where the hell did it go? Now, you mentioned Helpy, and I do like that idea. My only issue with Helpy, I assume you mean Help Wanted 2 Helpy / Ruin Helpy. My only issue with Helpy being the Mimic 2 program is everything we're seeing out of Secret of the Mimic makes me think that Helpy is the original Mimic. Everything we're seeing about Secret of the Mimic is showing Helpy all over the place, to the point where the most recent teaser we got from the goddamn Dawko charity live stream was Mr. Helper. Like, so the only issue, and you sent this before we got that teaser, so I get it. My only issue with the idea of Helpy being this new Mimic that Gregory had created is that Helpy seems so directly intertwined with the Mimic 1 program that it might predate most of FNAF, which is crazy. That Helpy is before Fredbear, right? There's a non-zero chance that Helpy as a character existed before Fredbear, which is insane. That being said, that doesn't discredit the idea of Gregory making a new Mimic program, like you said, Mimic 2. I wonder if that's the entity we see within Mexis. Because the Mexis console is also old. The Mexis console seems to be connected to Secret of the Mimic, and we'll hopefully figure out what that is 2 weeks from now. But the entity seems new. The entity that, like, is the kind of the avatar of the Mexis console that we eventually lock back inside the Mexis console, I think that's new. I think that was added at the Pizzaplex. That might be what Gregory was making. That might be our Mimic 2. That is very possible. I don't know. I think there's a lot of ways to take it. I think you are completely correct in pointing out that now that we know about the Mimic, that section of the therapy logs is heavily suspect. And this is, like I mentioned in the last question, this is one of my favorite parts about what we have in front of us with Security Breach, because Security Breach is such a melting pot, mixed bag of lore, and a lot of it goes nowhere. And I think that's on purpose, because I think the future games we get coming out are going to point us right back to Security Breach and go, that's what that was. And I think this might be the early signs of one of those things, where when it came out, it's like, oh, I guess he was talking to Glitch Trap. That's weird. And then 3 games later, it's like, oh, he was making this animatronic. Like, I think that we're seeing the early stages of that phase, which I'm very excited for. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Robert, him. What do you make of the torture chair in the first FNAF movie and the saw-like endo thing, the blendo I'll have you know, featured in the Dead by Daylight animation? The two seem similar enough in spirit and must be related. Could this indicate that a similar device was used in the game's canon, or do we chalk it up as DVD is referencing the movie? Thank you for your question, Robert. I would say your second option. On to the next one. No, I think it does make a lot more sense that this is more of a, hey, here's a cool way we can reference the movie while being true to the games. And that, like, Shreddy Faz Chair was really cool. What if we make it an endo that he throws someone onto, which would, like, in a way attach them to an animatronic? I think that was just, like, a cool reference. However, I'm going to use your question as an excuse to talk about Dead by Daylight. So, that is I do kind of think we chalk it up to Dead by Daylight is referencing the movie in a cool new interpretive way. However, I want to talk about Springtrap Dead by Daylight. So thank you for your question, Robert. Springtrap Dead by Daylight. They did so good. He's so good. He's so good. First of all, best model we've ever gotten for Springtrap. It's crazy. It's not close. By far the best model we've ever gotten for Springtrap. Furthermore, great animations we got for Springtrap. The idea of Springtrap throwing an axe into someone's shoulder blade, grabbing them by the axe and pulling them into a scream is so fucking cool. It's insane how cool that is. And look, I get it. It's funny that a lot of people have said, I don't like that he has an axe. That's fanon. He's never canonically used a fire axe. Newsflash, outside of the movie, he's never canonically used a knife either. The amount of, it's fine if you want to be like, he shouldn't have a weapon at all. That I kind of agree with. I like that idea. But the people who I've been seeing complain about the fire axe are almost all of them are like, thank God they gave him a knife, but I'm mad they gave him the fire axe because that's not canon. Brother, the knife isn't canon. But regardless, they're both cool. I like that he got both. The big debate was, is he going to get a knife or an axe? And the answer was yes, which is awesome. I think the door and camera mechanic is not only such a good idea for a FNAF killer, but it's also just really refreshing for Dead by Daylight. A lot of y'all don't know this. I'm a year one Dead by Daylight player. I hadn't played for like 2 to 3 years in the meanwhile, maybe more, but I racked up like hundreds of hours year 1, 2, 3, 4. Like I was playing a good amount of Dead by Daylight and then I kind of fell off, just time passed. And this door mechanic is so refreshing. For Dead by Daylight in general. I just think that behavior knocked it out of the park with this chapter. What did I want a survivor? Yes, and I'm upset. But at least what we got was amazing. And I probably am not going to be able to play the PTB for the first stream at all, just because this week is going to be crazy. But the second that chapter goes live, I will be playing the hell out of it, especially to help promote 5 Gens at Freddy's. If any of you guys didn't know, I'm involved in a charity tournament run by David Barron and Posture Spec about Dead by Daylight. It's a Dead by Daylight tournament. I think it's if I remember, I'm gonna do this justice. I'm gonna pull up the document. I'm not gonna give you too many details because I don't know it's public yet. So I'm only gonna go over the public information. I don't want to be a leaker. I don't want to leak stuff. So, 5 Gens of Freddy's charity tournament. It's supporting the Crisis text line. 8 teams. There are 8 teams of 5 participating. There is 40 people participating in this Dead by Daylight tournament. They're all FNAF YouTubers to some extent, and we're all going to be playing Dead by Daylight. I guarantee you pretty much all of us are going to be playing Springtrap. There are other allowed killers in the tournament, but let's be real, we're probably all playing Springtrap. We're probably all going to pick the goddamn Freddy's map because we really like that map because we're FNAF YouTubers. But let me get this. This is an insane list. I got to shout out. David Baird is the king of networking. This man is insane about getting people to participate in stuff. Let me go through this insane roster that him and Posture have put together. It's crazy. I'm just going to run down the list. We've got Glamrock Dusty, Quite, Quinnaman, The Baddest, The Blue Guy, Bonzi, Sistriac Z, Johnny the Night Guard, Stupid Butterfly, Sin, Soft Synthetic, That Cyber Guy, Dan Cybert, Dapper Mr. Tom, host of Game Theory, Dawko, GT Live / Ash, me, 3FS, Fact Attacked, Plenty, Resbowski, Thaf9, Dags, DJ Sturf, Ghost Place, Johnny Blocks, Stop Drop, I Am Reese, Jerikai Games, Sir55, SSJ Josiah, Vonnie, Backseat Games, Damian Lee, The Dapper Waffle, Easy Speezy, Unique Geef, Astral Spiff, Chicken Ninja 42, Mr. Wigglesworth, Frogger 25, and FNAF. It is a stacked charity event, ladies and gentlemen. And you better be there. I will be too. It's in the beginning of July 6th to July 8th. Just wanted to shout that out real quick. Y'all better be there, because I'm going to be there. And other people are there too. I went on a tangent. I forgot where I was. Thank you for your question. Our next question comes from S. High, they, them. Why have there been new versions of Man and Helpy in like every Steel Wolf FNAF game? Even Secret of the Mimic, which is supposed to show us the earliest lore in the timeline, includes some form of both Helpy and Man. Are these characters supposed to be lore relevant now, or is there just someone on the team who really likes them? Thank you for your question. I'm going to be super honest. I think it's a bit of column B, a little bit of column A. I think when you're making a video game, if you make a character design that's really, really good, you're going to find a way to make them important and just do that. And that's not like that's not a dig. That's not like, oh, how dare they make their favorite character lore relevant. That's how games work. If you make a game and there's a fan favorite character, you go, okay, well, there was this one bit of lore that wasn't fleshed out yet. Throw them in. You know? So I think Man was everyone kind of agrees one of the best segments of Security Breach was DJ Man. It was such a cool set piece. It was actually like really intense for that game, and it just felt good. And they recognized we liked DJ Man. So they brought him back for Help Wanted 2. And we liked that too. So I was like, all right, well, damn. We needed a lore relevant character to link to Secret of the Mimic. Well, we got DJ Man. Make him an old-timey musician. And you know what? We're going to like it again because his design is heat. They made his mouth a music box. It's so fucking cool. So I think that is kind of just the game design process of, you know, it's not necessarily set in stone which animatronics link back to Edwin Murray. We don't know yet. And when they're creating it, it's not, you know, this isn't an ordained by the universe narrative. It is created by people, and those people went, well, we need an animatronic that links back to Edwin Murray. So which of the newer animatronics stand out and could link back to Edwin Murray? And one of those was probably DJ Man. And they went, yeah, that could be cool, let's do it. And the same kind of goes for Helpy. Ever since, you know, FNAF 6, Helpy's been a fan favorite, and they went, well, where did Helpy come from? Let's answer that question, and linked it into the lore. And that's just kind of how ongoing stories go, you know? But yeah, at least that's my take. Obviously, I don't know for sure, but that's what I assume is going on. But thank you for your question. Our next one comes from Sarah, she, her, and her partner, M. Now, this is y'all tickled me with this one, and y'all know you would. Get ready. This one's a doozy. More of a theory than a question. In Security Breach, Glamrock Freddy's line, "I am not me," reminds me of Iago from Shakespeare's Othello at the end of Act 1, Scene 3. I am not what I am. Iago was the ultimate betrayer and master manipulator. He gained Othello's trust, manipulated him into distrusting and eventually killing his wife, which then, upon realizing his mistake, drove Othello to unalive himself, and did it all for the sake of turning others into monsters to hide his own inner monstrosity. Perhaps Freddy, during the events of Security Breach, had been a villain under Vanny the whole time, manipulating Gregory into friendship in order to disable MXES. Twisted Animatronic just came out with a new video on the Game Jolt logs from Gregory, and with that context, I think it could work. After all, Freddy was intended to turn on Gregory sometime during Security Breach based on cut audio. Gregory, under Vanny's influence as GGY, did the Iago thing to Cassie, after all, if we take Escape the Pizzaplex as canon, which I argue we can. Maybe that's what Vanny does when she has control over you. She pulls on your strings like a puppeteer. It certainly fits the vibe of her character, all floaty and dancy. It's also resonant with the arcade claw machine ending of Help Wanted 2. We're curious if you'd be interested into looking into the literary parallel we found. Give Mark some brushes for us. Will do. Y'all cooked. Now, I will say, a lot of this is based off of a cut version of a game we didn't get. Because as cool as this is, and we're going to get into it, I think the majority of it is disproven by the intro of Security Breach with the save mode boot. I agree with you. I think in this early version, Freddy was eventually going to turn, but I think they changed that later on. And I think part of that change was adding the safe mode reboot, because it seems fairly easy to very quickly add safe mode to the opening of the game, which gives us enough information of, oh, he rebooted and flushed out Glitchtrap. So I think that was a later addition. And in this earlier edition, he was going to turn. So y'all cooked, especially including Escape the Pizzaplex. For those of you who don't know, in Escape the Pizzaplex, one of Gregory's last pranks is he programs Roxy to eventually turn on Cassie and have Roxy kill Cassie. So this is something that's in the mind space of Steelwool and Scott, of your robot companion turning on you and was going to the whole time, but was just slowly gaining your trust, even if they themselves don't know it. So that's already kind of in the mind space of Scott and Steelwool. And then to connect this to, Othello and Iago, I see the parallel, especially if we're considering Cassie again with Ruin killing Roxy. I see where you're going with this, and I like that connection. I wonder how much of this was originally connected to Shakespeare, especially when we consider... Oh, let me pull up that line. Let me pull up the line, because I'm already forgetting. Especially when we consider... when we originally got the Secret of the Mimic teaser, Brian Famerth of Steelwool quote tweeted it with, "The evil that men do lives after them. The good is often interred with their bones." This is a quote from Shakespeare. Obviously, Shakespeare is on the mind of these people. This is a quote from Julius Caesar. Essentially, it's Mark Antony talking and lamenting Caesar in the eulogy. And the point of the line, in case you aren't up to snuff with your Shakespeare, the point of the line is, the good that someone does is buried with them. The evil of what they've done lives on. It's the idea of no matter how good someone's intentions are, if they've done something wrong, that wrong persists. And when this was talked about with Secret of the Mimic, this really led into the Mimic may have been created with good intentions, but the evil of what it is lives on. But to use a Shakespeare quote for the first promotion for your new game, clearly Shakespeare's on the mind. So your idea of connecting I am not me to I am not what I am of Iago from Othello, you're on the money. I think that's probably on purpose. The question then becomes, and this is what we have to answer, and this is the crux of the question itself. It feels purposeful. Is this still purposeful? Because like I mentioned, a lot of the evidence for Glamrock Freddy being a villain all along and eventually changing his mind and siding with Gregory, this is from the cut logs, from the Game Jolt logs, from the cut audio, right? This is stuff that isn't in the final game. And to quote Scott, Security Breach is the game we have. I think, as it stands, Glamrock Freddy is freed from Glitchtrap's control and is slowly taken over throughout the rest of the game until eventually the final boss with Burntrap. But I do think I Am Not Me is a remnant of the original, or at least previous plot of this game, where like in Escape the Pizzaplex, Glamrock Freddy is, whether he knows it or not, working for Vanny the whole time and eventually was going to turn on Gregory. And I think I Am Not Me, since it is such a weird line too, right? When you're looking for quotes like this, it's not just like Gregory says, help, and we go, wait a minute. In Romeo and Juliet, Romeo yelled help. Obviously not that. I Am Not Me being the crux of his most important monologue of the game, and it being such a strange line, is worth looking into literary parallels and literary references. And that being a reference to I Am Not What I Am, I think has a lot of merit to it. I think that makes a lot of sense. So I don't know. I think my thoughts are, I do think Steelwool has Shakespeare on the mind. I think you're right to call this out. I think this reference is much more tied to that previous version of security breach and is maybe not so relevant with the security breach we got, but it was left in there because it's cool and it's not a direct quote, so it's not that important anyway. That's my thoughts, I think, to summarize. But great call out. I think you are right on the money with that. Our next question comes from Bugs, she, they. What is your personal definition of canon events, fan theory, fan headcanon, and fan AU? If possible, with examples. Also, who do you think the best character design and or storytelling in the FNAF universe is? Thank you for your question, Bugs. So I guess I'll go in order. Canon events. Personally, I guess my definition of canon events is closely tied to how Scott uses the word continuity, where it's something that took place in-game. That is a canon event. Fan theory, I would say, is any extrapolation from the evidence in front of us. So any theory, whether or not it's well backed or not backed, if you're using evidence we have in front of us and bridging a gap that is not covered in the games, that's a theory. Headcanon, I would say, is a theory without evidence. Any theory without evidence is a headcanon. And that's not to say they're inherently wrong. You can have headcanons that end up that are right eventually. But if your theory has no direct evidence, it's closer to a headcanon. And that's fine. I've got plenty of headcanons myself. My headcanon on Michael Afton is that he's bad at everything except for FNAF-styled gameplay sections, which I think is really funny. And there is, the evidence for it is theories I've made. So it's so abstracted that it's basically a headcanon. I also have a headcanon that but I wouldn't say something like William and Henry were toxic yaoi lovers is a headcanon because that's just in the base text. That's just canon. But anyway, and then fan AU, I think that just goes down to the traditional definition of an AU, right? That's just a retelling. Alternate universe. It's something that like, hey, here's fan fiction about this story with these two key things changed. Yeah. Who do you think has the best character design and or storytelling in the FNAF universe? Now, that's an interesting question. I think those are two different questions. I think those are two different answers for me. Because I think the best character design, I either give that to Springtrap, which is kind of a cliche, but Scott cooked. He knew. Or, and now here's the thing. There's different kinds of character design. I think the scariest character design in FNAF, and this might just be my own bias, is Nightmare Balloon Boy, unironically. He scares me more than any animatronic we've gotten. He just has too many teeth. I don't like it. But as far as like most visually appealing design, I think I give that to, honestly, Montgomery Gator. He's got a really tight and well-made design. As far as most like competent horror design, I think I give it to Springtrap. Now, as far as most well-written character or best storytelling, problem, there's barely any writing in the base text. I think it has to default go to Vanessa. Just by default, if we're going off of just the games, she has the most text devoted to her of any character we've ever gotten. And it's compelling. So I think it goes to Vanessa as far as like in-game most well-written character. And I think that's not a hot take. I think if you think it's a hot take, you hate women. We don't hate women during Pride Month. That's crazy. But I think that'll be our last question. So thank you for your question. I think we're around 45 minutes. If you want your questions answered on the podcast, feel free to send them to Freddy'sFazbearPizzaPodcast@gmail.com. That's in the description, copy and paste. It's a pain to type out. And remember, I'll be streaming. I'm going to try to be the first person to stream Rainbow Road on the East Coast. Mario Kart World comes out, Thursday, but I'll be streaming it as early in the morning, probably 1 a.m. as possible. And I'll try to be the first person on the East Coast to unlock Rainbow Road. Will I? I don't know, but I'm sure going to try. But until next time, as always, thank you for watching the Freddy Fazbear Pizza Podcast, where the pizza abilities are endless. We hope to enjoy your future patronage. Bye-bye for now.